Hi, I'm Roy, talking about the strange joys of abandoned books and other things that come my way. And today I'm talking about the ideal book. So this is response to video made by Criminoli, and which was then sort of rendered into tag form by MJ on Reading This Life. Um, so what it's about, it's the things that make a book ideal other than the text. So it's not about the words, the story, the content. It's about all the other stuff, the physical nature of the book, the typography, the design, um, basically all the things the publisher does to put it together. So I think that's really interesting because I do know, I've got certain preferences. Some books I've got that I love for kind of how they are as well as what's in them. Um, so the ideal book, that could be what's the most elaborate, fancy, super designed book I've got, and that's not really my bag. I don't really go for things like folio editions, that kind of stuff. It's the danger for me, I suppose, is they then become artifacts that are too good to read, too nice to read. Having said that, I do buy books not necessarily to read. Um, Reflecting on that, I've got a big collection of versions of She by H. Rider Haggard, um, various vintage paperbacks. Obviously, I've read it once. This one appears to have been eaten by something. And yeah, so I've got these because I love the covers. I love them as books. And in fact, when it was a set book on the MA I'm studying on, I bought a cheap Penguin, second-hand Penguin Classics edition, so I'd have a sort of one I could really use and abuse, write on, etc., carry around, and it wouldn't matter. Because the thing is about these dudes, they're old, and I don't really want to be putting too much stress on them. That's kind of a collector thing, sort of. Um, so in a way, this is ideal for the purpose. It's fit for the purpose of reading and not worrying too much about it. And there are plenty of books like that where their idealness is their being sort of just right for the job. I'm thinking of Black Horse Westerns, for instance, a huge series of Western books published in the UK. They finish now, unfortunately. Made mainly for libraries, so they're hardbacks with integral covers, and they're virtually indestructible. And the paper's some kind of bright acid-free paper. They've got these heavy covers. I truly think if civilization ends and all that's left is rubble and radioactive cockroaches, there will be these in pristine readable condition. So, fit for purpose books like this, um, exactly, immaculate typesetting, are just right. And yet I don't think of this as a thing of great beauty. I don't sort of feel I yearn to have lots more books that look and feel like this. I sort of appreciate them, more than loving them. Sometimes also it's a book can be just right for the circumstances. Looking for a quick read, a couple of hours, again with the portability factor. Something like this old paperback, John Jakes, Brack the Barbarian, Star Books. It's pretty slender. It's not a daunting read. Um, in fact, there are, I think, 160 pages. Yeah, exactly 160 pages, which seems to be a sort of benchmark. Um, no nonsense typography, nice and clean. So yeah, this is sort of ideal for the circumstance. Short and sweet, so short. Maybe that's why Brack looks so alarmed on the front. His book's almost over before you've started reading it. Um, but again, that isn't like why I read, or I don't think, oh, let's find a short book. Um, so what do I like? Well, let's look at the prompts. The prompts from the MJ version of this. So, what format is your perfect book? Hardback, paperback, or even e-format? I'm totally a paperback lover, and for me, there is a size of paperback that is the mass market paperback. I must have one within reach at all times. It's in my contract. Yes, so not trade paperbacks, etc. Your classic mass market paperback is just the thing. Um, I, I I can like hardbacks, particularly old ones. Um, and then again, for the practicality of reading, that there are books I read in the dark at night, um, where e-reader is the best way to do it. So it kind of depends what it is. But if I was gonna, my desert island books would be paperbacks definitely. About how many pages is your perfect book? Okay, I would say my perfect book would be a bit more generous than that kind of quick and dirty 160 page mark. Not necessarily a great big doorstop. Um, there's a sort of bloating that's gone on, I think, in fiction. Some of it's typography, and actually the books aren't that long. They've just made them big because people like to buy big books. But I don't know. I think there's a sort of, it's probably more like 250 to 300, where it sort of feels like, hey, this isn't just a sort of one night stand. You're being given something you can fully immerse yourself in for a length of time. Are you particular as to where the chapters begin? I hadn't thought about that until Ollie mentioned it. So, should chapters start on a brand new page each time? I think that is good. When that happens, I don't sweat it when they run on though, as long as the typography's done well. You particular as to where page numbers are located? Again, this wasn't keeping me awake at night, but bottom center is the best because it doesn't interfere, it doesn't jump out. Just an example. I found a book where a lot of these things are done really badly. So this is The Hand of Cain, Robert E. Howard from Centaur Press. The page numbers, first page number you see is bottom center, and then they jump up to the top right throughout. And is margins? Yeah, margins is coming up. I'll talk a bit about margins now, because look how aesthetically displeasing it is to have huge unnecessary margins wasting space, and then a really mean gutter in the middle, so you've got to kind of yank the book right open and peer into the middle. So yeah, so sticking to the question, page numbers, centre bottom if you please, Mr. Typesetter. Favourite font? Not really. I mean, obviously it's got to be a serif font because they do facilitate readability. Do you check the font details if available? I spotted that. I think that's a bit prissy. I think a lot of this should be invisible. So what you're looking for, you want the reading experience to be effortless. Why this is bad is the difficulties of the pages, the words disappearing and things like that. Or another one, is Swords Against Darkness 2 from Zebra Books. Ridiculously narrow margins around the outside. It's almost like you're being ejected from the page every time you read it. So when it's wrong, you notice it. You don't want things that call your attention. So to me, like too much fanciness, like a big elaborate letter at the beginning of each chapter, things like that are a bit too much. So what I mean is the book designer's art, I think, should be kind of invisible. and things like naming the font or sort of indicating that they had a special font created for that book. Yeah, that's I'd sort of keep that for the website for real geeks to find out about. Um, do margins matter to you? Covered that. Does your perfect book have any other unique features that makes it perfect? If yes, please share. Well, I had an idea of, well, what can I find as a perfect book? So near perfect, I've got Lud in the Mist by Hope Mearleys, Ballantine Books, mid-70s vintage. So there's a few things about this. One is a wraparound cover. So it's a paperback, hooray for paperbacks, um, but they're really making paperback into an art form. In the Ballantine Fantasy series, nearly all had these wraparound covers, so you get this gorgeous, extensive, immersive thing, which suits fantasy really, because fantasy is about having this sort of world you can travel into. Also, it's got a kind of semi-matte, semi-gloss. It has got a varnish on it, but it's not super glossy. I think a fully glossy book can look a bit tacky, and then you start piling on extra things like foil lettering and embossing. It all feels like it's trying a bit too hard. So this hasn't got any of that. I should say the colours have probably faded since I bought it in 1977. But yeah, lots of nice things about that there. It is now a vintage paperback. It's got the vintage paper smell, which is probably like the smell of something slowly decaying, um, which I do like. And I would probably, much as I like the smell of new books, I would probably nail my colours to the mast of the vintage book smell, to mix a metaphor there. Vintage book smell is the winner. So this has acquired that. Other things, it's got various introductory bits. You don't just open it and a couple of pages in, you're straight into the story. You've got a blurb page, some branding, adult fantasy. Could kind of wish they'd called it something else, but that was the name of the series. The usual sort of publisher's information, which gets more and more interesting as time goes on. An epigraph, an introduction, one of Lynn Carter's sizzling introductions that appear in all of the Ballantine fantasy books. They're like sort of espresso shots of writing, and I actually read the introductions on their own if I need a bit of a lift. Quote from another epigraph, I suppose. It's a quote that sort of stands before the text, and finally you get the thing itself. So you arrive at this first paragraph, and it's been given some sort of lead in, so you know you're really getting something important. And it's a lovely book, by the way. Anyone who's into well, fantasy in general, fans of Neil Gaiman loves this book. It's like directly alluded to in Stardust, for instance, unlike anything else, and is generally brilliant. Um, so the chapters do just run on, but the typography is really nice. Margins are all fine, and a little bit of a extra info at the back about other fantasy titles you can get. Other things that would make it even better, for me as a Brit, American paperbacks have a kind of romance to them. So I think things like sprayed yellow edges, stuff like that, were sort of give me an extra sense of impending adventure when I pick up a book. And how many pages is this? 273. So it's a little bit more than just a sort of quickie read, but it's not vast. It's not a trilogy. It's not, you're not committing your life. You're not mortgaging your future time to actually getting to the point of the story. So some thoughts there on an ideal book in terms of its physical production. Oh, hang on, any more questions? Show us the cover. Yes, done that. Tag some fellow booktubers. I feel I'm too new at booktube to lay that upon anybody. I would probably be suffering minor agonies about worrying if people thought it was cool or not. So I will simply say, if you wish to do this, tag yourself. I'll put all the info in the description. Goodbye.